What's on your playlist right now?
In my class.
Go to guilty pleasure food.
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Hi, my name is Mikael Villalobos. I serve as Associate Vice Chancellor for the Office of Campus and Community Relations. In my role, I have the great honor of leading long-standing campus-wide initiatives that operationalize our principles of community. I am also a proud Aggie alum, completing both my undergraduate and graduate work at UC Davis. I have also spent the entirety of my 30-plus year career at UC Davis focusing on access and inclusion. Having been a student and a staff member, I've been enriched by our campus community, and I'm proud to call UC Davis my community.
Welcome to Face to Face, Michael.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm glad you're here with us today. So as you said in your intro, you're a longtime Aggie. You've been with us for a long time. Tell us about your experience as a student and what interested you in pursuing a career in access and inclusion.
So I typically share this story by starting that it truly is by accident. I came to UC Davis as an undergrad in 1989 and didn't really know what activism was and certainly did not see myself as a student activist. I was invited to participate in some discussions about what people were calling as our principles at that time. So that was really my introduction to student activism. But even then, interestingly enough, I never even considered myself as a student activist, certainly did not consider myself as a leader, but that opportunity to be engaged in those kinds of conversations really gave me an idea in terms of what it means for the university to be continuously working toward greater access for everyone. And at the same time, what does it mean for that access to really be framed around this ethos of belonging?
Yeah. So you had the activism gene, and you just didn't know it, right?
I didn't know it. And I guess, once it bit, it stuck.
Yeah. Well, now you oversee many campus-wide inclusion projects. One of those is the Campus Community Book Project. Can you tell us about that program and your thoughts about how it's working?
It's one of the hallmark initiatives that certainly come out of our division, and we are really fortunate that it is one of those initiatives that's supported by our leadership. And it is a beautiful example of what community building really is like. So when we think about how to bring the campus community together, the Campus Community Book Project really aims at having dialogue, important discussions, controversial topics, and really the objective is providing an opportunity platform for us to engage in these important conversations. So we have opportunities to highlight the work of our faculty, many student organizations, external organizations, the work of our staff that connect to the theme of a particular book that's chosen, and it is a year-long event, so it's hard work, but we certainly are proud of how it has expanded over the years, and we continue to make sure that it is one of those initiatives that do operationalize what it means to build community.
You always choose excellent books, which I enjoy reading, and I really get a kick out of meeting the authors, which I get the opportunity to do. So thanks for all that great work.
Absolutely.
Really
We're glad
benefits.
to have them. It's exciting.
Really benefits the campus. Are there some other programs or resources or other things you'd like to pursue?
Sure. When we think about programs, and especially in my world, and that is inclusion and equity, we want very much for these important conversations about belongingness to be a part of the conversation that we have in our day-to-day interactions with folks. I mean, I think people may not recognize that it is these types of conversations that essentially move us closer to both the premise and the promise of what it means to be a welcoming campus community. So certainly we are proud of our DEI education program because that is a vehicle that promotes these important conversations. What I love hearing from folks is that I never thought that this was the kind of conversation that we would have as part of professional development. We engage with people who are different from us all the time. And so it is important that as we think about our work in the university, that we are mindful in terms of what it means for us to engage in a way that certainly ensures that everyone feel that they belong, that they can thrive here, and we all have a part in making sure that we do that as far as the daily interactions in how we create programs and events. So putting just a little bit of work in terms of, well, how does it change if we ask who else should be a part of this conversation? Or how does it change when we ask what voices have we not heard if we're going to create this practice or policy? And so a lot of that comes out during our trainings and education programs.
Well, this type of inclusion just makes us a more welcoming, gives us better outcomes, educational outcomes, research outcomes, community service outcomes.
Agreed.
So I appreciate all that work.
Thank you.
One of the signature aspects of UC Davis that I was delighted to find out about when I came here was the principles of community.
Yes.
So you were a part of establishing those principles years ago, and you've had a large role in keeping them going over the years. Can you talk about how you've seen the community support the principles back from the early days until now?
Sure. So I think when folks think about the principles, it may feel very abstract to them. And it really is full circle for me when by really an invitation from a classmate, another student at that time, invited me to be a part of a discussion in terms of framing what the principles should say and the message that really speaks to who we want to be as a university. So when I think about that event, and certainly how I have become as a professional here on campus, when I think about my work operationalizing its tenets, really do speak volumes to me. And so I often say that, there are things that we did back in 1990 that we do differently today. And a good reason for that is because we have learned to have conversations to create the spaces in terms of what it means to operationalize the spirit of the principles of community from the centers that we now have that we didn't have back in the 90s. Those are all examples of how the principles were operationalized to ways in terms of how we ensure that our practices in recruitment certainly would attract a robust applicant pool, to how we have created working groups that review policy with equity and inclusion as lenses. And certainly the initiative that come out of my office are all grounded in the principles. So a lot of examples in terms of what it means to have operationalized the principles.
So this year we're actually celebrating the 35th anniversary of those principles, as you know. So what activities or events are you excited about as we celebrate?
Yeah. So it is going to be a year-long campaign. And the approach for the reaffirmation of the 35th year really is looking at the theme of community for community. And so we are inviting folks in their respective spaces to really find ways in how they would celebrate, how they would recommit, they would reaffirm the principles. And that can look different in many ways. We want folks to have the ability to develop in terms of what would be salient to them as far as how they make the principles alive, including a variety of events throughout the year that would highlight various speakers, the work of different organizations, both on campus and off campus.
So maybe the most important question, with respect to current events, in these tumultuous times we're living in, how do you think the principles stand and are applied in these times?
Well, I think it's important for us to embrace our principles even tighter. Today's challenges are nothing new. We faced these challenges before, and I'd like to think that we have been resilient and certainly continue to be resilient. And as I reflect on the 35 years of the principles, I have no doubt that our resilience will continue beyond these first 35 years. I do think that it's important that we find the opportunity to always speak about our principles, because at the heart of our principles is really for everyone to embrace, because if not everyone embraces the principles, it makes it hard for us to create that community that we so much want to have. So during these times, as we reflect challenges in terms of the work that I do and the work that my colleagues do that's related to equity, inclusion, and access, the principles really is a good reminder that we have faced challenges before, and that our resilience and our creativity and our commitment to who we are as a campus community in terms of our values have to speak even louder.
I like to tell people that our principles and our values have permanence. Yep. They don't change with the direction of the wind or what's going on. So we have to really reflect that in all of our activities. So,
Agreed.
Yeah. I'm going to change gears a little bit.
Sure.
We have a feature in Face-to-Face which we call the hot seat.
Okay.
And you're in the hot seat. So
okay, pretty hot.
all that means is I'm going to give you some rapid-fire questions.
Okay.
Looking for like a one-word or one-sentence kind of answer,
Sure.
if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Now, I understand as a student you studied art.
Yes.
So what's your favorite artist or piece of art?
Okay. Well, I was a great admirer of Paul Cadmus. And Paul Cadmus did a lot of work in the early 1900s and lived to over 100 years old. I actually am a great fan of figurative art, studied with Wayne Thiebaud. But when I was a student, certainly that wasn't the trend at that time. Conceptual art was the trend at that time. So I really wanted to find spaces where I could practice my art, and that was figurative art.
That's great. Thiebaud was such a great artist.
Oh, he was, yeah.
Favorite spot on campus?
Oh, the Arboretum.
Arboretum. A lot of people say that. I agree.
Especially now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In an alternative universe, what job would you be doing?
Therapist.
A therapist. Wow, interesting. Yeah. Who inspires you?
My mother.
Yeah. I get that one. Same.
My mother.
Yeah. This is my favorite question to ask every guest on the show. What is at the top of your playlist right now? What artist or music?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, it changes every day.
Okay.
I run daily. So depending on the day, I listen to different things. So when I want to really get myself goosed up, I listen to a bunch of bands from the 80s. So I look back to my misspent youth in the 80s, watching a lot of MTV. And enjoy reliving those moments when I enjoyed listening to those bands, and particularly a lot of British New Wave.
Sort of an old school music person myself, so we're on the same page there. Well, now it's your turn. You can ask me anything you'd like to know.
Sure. During your tenure as Chancellor, and certainly we hope that we continue to have you as Chancellor for a long time, where have you seen the greatest changes or growth on campus?
I'm going to pick two areas. One is when I came in 8 years ago in 2017, I would think it's fair to say that there's a dysfunctional relationship between the administration and the rest of the campus. And I like to think we've improved that significantly. I feel much better about how we interact with students and how we interact with staff and faculty, the campus leadership. Not that we always agree on everything, but I just feel like it's a much more collegial, friendlier atmosphere. The second one I'll pick is external. I always said UC Davis was sort of like a sleeping giant or best kept secret, all those kind of metaphors when I came. But I think we have a much more prominent national and global profile than we did 8 years ago, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I certainly agree, and what you said in terms of the complicated relationship between staff, students, administrators, for example, have been complicated, and I do see that change, and it very much reminds me of what it means, for us to find ways to break down these barriers that keep us in silos that have to do with our titles.
Yeah, indeed. Anything else you want to ask?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I tell folks that I tell stories for a living. I think you learn a great deal from stories. I've always been curious what Chancellor May was like as a boy or as a child, in terms of your interests that certainly led you to where you are.
I talk about this in speeches. The engineering in me came out through my interest in Lego and jigsaw puzzles and erector sets, which I don't think they make anymore. But things that I had to put together and use my imagination and creativity. And then later on, through my love of comic books and science fiction, which actually persists to today. Yeah. That's kind of like, I've been that way since I was a boy.
Yeah, great. Mm-hmm. One last question.
Okay.
So you as our leader, what would you say to students, staff, faculty who are aspiring to be leaders, and how do they go about making those steps to be leaders on campus?
I think that's a great question, and I always tell people there's really two important ingredients you need to be a leader. One is sort of a vision. You have to know sort of where you're leading to, where you want to go, and two is followers. so if no one is feeling engaged or you're not getting any traction with your vision, then it's going to be hard to be a leader. So, but I'll say beyond those two things, you have to have some empathy for people, be a good listener. Don't try to be the smartest person in the room. Although I think humility is really important in leadership, so I try to model that. So those are kind of my own keys to successful leadership.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are really good questions. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.
And thanks for sitting down and talking
Absolutely.
with us today. This was a great conversation.
This is fun.
Appreciate you and what you do for the campus, and I hope you continue to do it for a while.
I hope so too.
Okay. And everyone who's watching, we'll see you next time on Face to Face. Thank you for tuning in. Go Ags.